All right, here's a video for, I'll do hard rock and indie for my vinyl haul for August of 2017. I believe this is August. If it's not, I'm just going to be saying the wrong thing. And I'll have to, whatever the title of the video is, what it is. I'm going to go through in order, and I'm also going to create a Spotify playlist. I'm going to do it with all my vinyl picks or pickups for August. I'm going to go in, not in the order that I purchased them, but in the order that they were released. It was suggested to me that I split these videos up because I guess, having one video with like 30 or 40 records was just really long, hour and a half. So I'm just going to do them by genre. That way the videos will be a little bit shorter. And if people want to just see what I bought of different genres, say they're not interested in the pop records, but they are interested in the hard rock records or the metal records only, we'll just go with that. So one of the first records I bought was a band called Smith, or a group called Smith. And what's cool about this record, this album, at least one of the songs on here was a song that was on the Death Proof soundtrack by Quentin Tarantino, I believe. And this is on Dunhill ABC. I think it was the song Baby It's You, I believe. I think it's that one. And there's a lot of cover songs on here too, like Who Do You Love? Let's Spend the Night Together. I Just Want to Make Love to You, which is kind of cool. I really didn't, honestly, that I Just Want to Make Love to You song is a Bad Company song. I always thought that was a Bad Company song, but it wasn't. It came out, years ago. And a lot of different bands have covered that. I have several records with that cover song on it. Off the top of my head, I can't think of all of them, but yeah, I Just Want to Make Love to You is really good. And this is a band called Smith. Most of the songs on here are sung by the female lead singer, Gail McCormick, but there's some other guys in the band that sing lead vocals as well. It's kind of a mishmash. It's kind of like a psych rock record, a little bit of psychedelic rock, but pop rock kind of. And this came out in 1969, so right on the edge there. And the funny thing about this cover is freaking ridiculous. These guys are all taking a picture in and around an outhouse, which is ridiculous. And yeah, I don't know why they thought this was a good idea for an album cover. I mean, it's kind of disgusting. It's kind of gross, but I can't imagine. But anyway, that's what they decided to do. A group called Smith, they have another record that I'm going to show called Minus Plus. Neither one of these, I mean, this album, I think, with that song, that was like their biggest hit. They kind of charted a little bit with that and played a couple shows, TV, appearances and things like that. But that's pretty much all they did. They came out with the second record. I don't think they did anything else after that. I actually found out about these guys. When I first started collecting vinyl in 2017, I started listening to a podcast called The Shabby Road Record Show. And it was two guys who live in Arizona, and they, are big fans of 1970s, hard rock music, basically hard rock, psychedelic, all kinds of different stuff, and into the 80s, and they would each bring 3 records, and they would play a song off each record, and just to introduce you to different music, and they would play everything from vinyl, which was really cool. And I discovered a lot of bands from the 1970s that I never would have heard of if I hadn't been listening to Shabby Road, and this is one of them. And this record I think you can find everywhere, and it's a cool little record to have. It may not be something you spin a lot, but it's a nice little 1969 psychedelic pop rock record, kind of. And yeah, if you like the female vocals of that in the 60s and 70s, which I do, I'm a big fan of female vocals just in general, and high vocals too, like Rush and Geddy Lee and all that stuff. I really like that soprano stuff, or the high end of the vocal spectrum, I guess. People do talk about ASMR, that's kind of what does it for me. I really enjoy that sound. I do enjoy male vocals, of course, but I definitely gravitate towards a lot more female vocals in a lot of bands, just because of the sound, not really because of any other reason. I mean, there probably is other reasons, but I just really appreciate it more so. And there's a lot. I appreciate it too, even more because it's more rare. There's not as many. So when you find them and they're really good, I enjoy that. I really do. All right, so that's a group called Smith. If you like, if you listen to Death Proof, I think it's on the Death Proof soundtrack. Is that song? It's pretty cool. I think Quentin Tarantino does a really good job picking his soundtracks and stuff like that, and songs from there, and to put in his movies. I think it's really thought out and really cool. And their second album, it's called Minus Plus. I think this one has a lot more. This one came out in 1970. I couldn't find a specific date. This is a group called, well, they actually kind of changed their name to just Smith, which, I guess that makes sense, because a group called Smith is just kind of weird. Mine has a huge split on it, but this record you can find super cheap. ABC Dunhill again. No real inner sleeve to speak of. They actually took a better picture this time. They're still outside, but they're just in a regular field now instead of hanging out at the outhouse. I don't know why they did that. And there's a little live shot there. Yeah, this is pretty good. Since You've Been Gone, I think, was a cover song. There probably was some more cover songs on here as well. Just songs that I'm less, familiar with. But yeah, this is it's in the same vein, kind of pop rock, psych rock a little bit. And it's pretty good. It's not great, but it's pretty good. If you see it for a couple bucks, I don't think you'd be too disappointed if you just want to hear some psych pop rock from the early 70s. All right, the next record came out June 1971. This is The Move, and this is their album called Message from the Country. And the one reason, this is a Shabby Road record show pick. The song on here, It Wasn't My Idea. Super, super heavy song. It's like a heavy metal song. And if somebody did that in a heavy metal style, this song would sound great, especially as a doom metal song. Like, it has the violins because The Move, and this is the end of the career. Most of the songs on here, though, is written by Bev Bevan and Roy Wood. Jeff Lynne wrote a couple songs on here, but these guys are the guys. Bev Bevan and Jeff Lynne went on to create ELO, Electric Light Orchestra. But this is their early stuff. This is before ELO ELO didn't start and just went off. They had the band called The Move before that, and they were kind of like a pop band, even a power pop a little bit. And this record's okay. There's some really good songs on here, but it's just kind of hit or miss. But it was, if you're going to buy it for any song, buy it for It Wasn't My Idea. I'll put that on the playlist because that song is freaking amazing. It's really good. This album also had a couple different album covers. So if you see Message from the Country with a different album cover, I think this was the US press. I think there's a UK press with a different album cover. I might be getting it backwards, but yeah, I think this was the US press. And this is kind of, I think it's like a compilation kind of. It's like songs, it's a lot of leftover stuff before. I think they had one more record they needed to do for EMI, the record label, or whatever record label they were on in Europe, Capitol or whatever, before they had to finish their contract. So they had a bunch of songs left over before they went to do ELO like full time. And they threw a bunch of them on here, and some of them are bad. Like their song Ella James is really good. There's just some good songs on here. But if you like ELO and you just want to kind of deep dive into ELO a little bit, into the early, like what ELO sounded like before they were ELO, or at least what they were, before they were ELO, what Jeff Lynne and Bev Bevan were working on. Buy some stuff from The Move. Their early stuff is definitely more just pop, pop rock stuff. But this is kind of a little bit heavier, maybe even a little bit psychedelic from psych rock. But it has the cellos in it and stuff like that. So, but yeah, definitely check out that song. It Wasn't My Idea because it's really, really good. All right, this album came out in 1972. I don't have an exact date, and this is the greatest hits from Roy Orbison. This is just a fantastic record. I do like Roy Orbison's early stuff. He's really, really good. Not much to say. I mean, any greatest hits probably is good, The reason why I had this one and I wanted to get this one is because, you know, somebody I knew when I was a kid had this version and they played it a few times, and I just was really intrigued with Roy Orbison. You know, that person talked it up a lot, and they were like, oh, Roy is the best. You know, they really liked him. And yeah, Roy Orbison is pretty fucking good. And this record in particular has all the hits, of course, Only Lonely in Dreams, Candyman, which of course it was sung by, I forget his name, but in the Blue Velvet movie, that's the fucking creepiest version of that song. You can never hear that song again without thinking of, it was the guy who played Ziggy in Quantum Leap. I can't remember that guy's name. He sang it in Blue Velvet. And Blue Velvet, go see that movie if you haven't seen it, of course. Freaking great movie. And Candyman, I don't think you can ever listen to that song again without thinking of that creepy version of it. You know, every song on here is good. Crying is amazing. Love Hurts. You know, before I knew about Roy Orbison, I had only heard the Nazareth version when I was a kid. Love Hurts, and I loved that version. And then, you know, you find out that that's a cover song from Roy Orbison, and his version is just as good. At least I think. I really like that Nazareth version. So it's kind of hard for me to pick, you know, because, you know, with a lot of stuff, it's usually the first time you hear it. You know, sometimes the second time you hear it or a different version, it is better. But a lot of times, you know, you have, especially if you've heard a song that you like and you heard it a bunch of times, and then you hear the original version or a cover version of that song, it never can be the same. But in this case, they're probably even. They're so different. And I always say, if you're going to do a cover song, you know, do it in your band's voice. You know, don't try to recreate the song, you know, in the way it was originally done. You know, do it like, I really think Nazareth did their version of that song, and Roy Orbison obviously is doing his version of it. Pretty sure he wrote that song. I have to double check. Let's see. Yeah, I'm not sure. B. Bryant, yeah, he didn't even write it. So anyway, this is an excellent greatest hits from Roy Orbison. Definitely pick that up, or any greatest hits. You know, just find the one that you know has most of your favorite songs on it. All right, this one came out in November '74. This record I highly recommend. This is Sweet. Desolation Boulevard. This album is a 5 out of 5 for me. It is one of the best records I have in my collection. I love this power pop band. It has great songs on here. Ballroom Blitz, even though you heard it a million times, it's still good. The 16s is great. No You Don't. AC/DC is good. I Want to Be Committed is good. Sweet FA. Fox on the Run is one of my favorite songs. Set Me Free is great. Saxon did a cover of Set Me Free. I just talked about that in a previous video. I love that version too. I think that Saxon kind of did, like I said, about cover songs, they did their own version of it, and they did a real good job, and it kind of, they really made it a new wave British heavy metal song. You know, it kind of worked. Into the Night and Solid Gold Brass. I mean, there's not a bad song on here. The center sleeve just has the lyrics. And I actually have a section of my record collection here. It's about 100 or so records that are power pop, and I put this in power pop. I definitely have enough records that I feel, and it's a genre that I appreciate and I really like that. So I throw this in my power pop collection, and this album is just fantastic. Tons of hits on here. Fox on the Run in particular is a great song. It's on Capitol. Fantastic. I need to pick up more Sweet records, honestly. This is the only one that I have, and it is a 5 out of 5. You would think that I went out and bought all the Sweet records, but I really need to check some more out. And I think they're all pretty cheap too. They shouldn't be too expensive out there. Anyway, pick up this album if you don't have it. It is fantastic. All right, next record I got was from March 11th, 1975, and this is Alice Cooper. Welcome to My Nightmare. This record is really good. I don't know if this was his first or second album he came out with his solo stuff, but and mine is slightly warped, but it actually still plays really good. It has lyric sheet with Alice looking creepy as fuck. You know, I remember I talked about my Killer that I have and how that album just freaked me out as a kid. Just that album cover just scared the hell out of me. And that's on Atlantic. And yeah, this is a really cool record. I've grown to appreciate this record more over time. It's not as hard rock, you know, as his early stuff, the Alice Cooper band stuff, his solo stuff. There's a lot of, you know, a lot of horns and stuff in here, which is interesting. You know, there's a lot of just interesting music. It's really kind of almost light rock in some places, you know. Welcome to My Nightmare especially, you know, like it has a lot of horns and stuff in it. There's a lot of interesting things on here, but the album is really, really, really good. The more I listen to this album, the more and more I love it. I never really got into it when I was a kid, but you know, I liked the earlier stuff, I think, and just now I think I appreciate this album a lot more than I used to. Only Women Bleed is an excellent song, and the lyrics are really good. You know, it's about domestic abuse and stuff like that, and it's a real sad song. And Black Widow is great, you know, and then, you know, Steven, I don't know if that's in that song, but I know it's in later. Welcome to My Nightmare, of course. Department of Youth is a great song. Steven is a really, really good song. It's kind of a concept record. I think it's a loose concept record, but it also has the Vincent Price narration on it. All great stuff. This album just keeps growing on me every time I listen to it. It's really, really good. Oh, speaking of, I didn't even realize, April 1975, this is one of my favorite records. Well, this is my favorite record from this band, Nazareth, Hair of the Dog. Obviously, Love Hurts is on this, which is great. This has one of the best album covers probably ever, maybe a top 10. It actually probably could be a top 10 for me, and really probably anybody. It's such a creepy, kind of just like a cool fucking Dungeons and Dragons type, you know, album cover, you know, like this is just really good stuff. Yeah, Dave Rowe, I don't know, I probably should look up and see what other album covers he did, or just art in general. My copy's a little beat up, especially on the spine, but you know, I only need one version of this record, and I've listened to this a bunch of times. My copy is really clean. Excellent record. Hair of the Dog, of course, Miss Misery, Love Hurts, Changing Times, Beggar's Day, Rose in the Heather, Whiskey Junk, and Please Don't Judas. Please Don't Judas Me is one of the greatest songs. Every song on here is great. It's 8 songs of nonstop. This is a 5 out of 5 record. Buy this. If you don't own it, buy it. It's fantastic. You shouldn't spend, I mean, maybe it's $20 now, but I probably wouldn't spend more than 10 or 15 for this album if you can find it, because there's a ton of them out there, but it's fantastic. And it really made me buy a lot of their other stuff, and a lot of their other stuff is pretty good. They never reached quite the heights of this album, you know, I think, in my opinion, of course. You know, I'm not saying in general, everybody has their favorite stuff. This is my favorite stuff from them. Sometimes the hits and the best-selling records are just my favorite stuff. You know, some bands aren't like that, you know, like I think I talked about the Scorpions, you know, where I really wore out Love at First Sting, and I really appreciate more a lot of their other records now. But I think objectively, you know, some bands, you know, their most popular record is their best album. It's just that it's played out. And I can understand that for this album if a lot of people played this out. But if you haven't played this out yet, buy this. It's fucking great. Really, really good album. Next record is from a band that I really love. This album came out April 1st, 1976, and I had this album when I was a kid. Rush, 2112. And 2112, the song was you know, when I listened to that as a kid, it just freaked me out that there was a song where the whole side of the album was a story, you know, like a science fiction story nonetheless, you know, like a futuristic, you know, sci-fi story, you know, and it just blew me away. And when I figured out, you know, oh, he found a guitar and he's strumming it, he's learning how to play it, and he brings what he's discovered, the music to his people, and they're like, no, this is from a race that destroyed themselves. We don't, and we think that the music is the reason. It just kind of blew me away, of, just what that meant, for music to me, because, you could tell stories, not just in a song, but in a whole side of a record, 20, 25 minutes. And that was just really, really cool. This was my first experience with that ever. Probably a lot of people, who grew up with this record. This might have been the only record in their collection where, a whole side of a record just told one continuous story, and it was a weird sci-fi story about a guy finding a guitar in the future, which is pretty amazing. And, Rush, of course, Neil Peart, Alex Lifeson, Geddy Lee. What can you say, man? I mean, these guys are amazing. One of my favorite things is when the Foo Fighters did the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and they dressed up like them and played, part of 2112 and stuff, and it was just really, really fantastic. You could tell the love that those guys had for this record and the band, the way they dressed up, and they really, really, showed how much they really liked the band, and that's really cool. That's probably one of the best Rock and Roll Hall of Fame introductions probably ever. At least ones I've seen. I haven't seen a ton because, you're only going to watch the ones of the bands you really like. So all the other ones are not going to hit you emotionally, but that one kind of does, just because Rush is so great. And there's so many good documentaries. There's a good banger documentary that they did on the band, which is, their whole history, which I thought was fantastic. It really shows the friendship between Geddy Lee and Alex Lifeson. They really are kind of best friends, and, really haven't not been best friends, ever. It doesn't sound like they really had any big fallout as a band or anything. Neil had some hard times in the middle there, losing his family, his wife and daughter and things like that. But, they all came back, and, music kind of kept them together. So anyway, Rush, 2112, not much to say about this album. Every song on here is great. The 2112 overtures, that song is excellent. Side 2 obviously has, Side 2 isn't the best, but Passage to Bangkok is good. Twilight Zone is interesting. Lessons, Tears, and Some for Nothing. All good stuff. I can listen to Side 2, but obviously I think the draw to this album is 2112. Great record. Here's another cool record. This is actually kind of a concept record, but this is a loose concept record. This came out January 19th, 1981. Getting into the 80s. And when was that Rush record? 79? No, 76. Yeah. So from 76 to 80. And this is Stixx, Paradise Theater. This is the Paradise Theater closed. This is the Paradise Theater opened. This is a fantastic record. I have the one, you're not even going to be able to see that, but well, maybe you can. Yeah, I have the one with the hologram on it, the Stixx hologram. I actually think if you listen real close, it kind of causes a little bit of noise on the album, which makes sense, right? Putting anything besides, music on there is, it's only on the one side. Yeah, it's only on one side. It's still fucking cool, even though it does kind of make a little bit of noise, which it's kind of good that it's on side 2, because side 2 doesn't have, side 1 has all the hits. And, I don't know, I say this a lot on my, in my videos. I do like hits. I like the songs that were popular. Those are the songs that I listen to the most. Now, if I get sick of those songs and I can listen to side 2 and enjoy those songs as much, or maybe not as much, but they're good, I can appreciate that. But this album, side 2, just, the hits from Stixx are fantastic. The non-hits are usually just okay songs. They're all unique in their own way, but I don't usually love them as much as the hits. That's just me, though. And yeah, this is still an excellent record. Side 2 is great, but it does have some noise, I think, from that hologram. But anyway, great songs on here. Rockin' the Paradise, Too Much Time on My Hands, Best of Times, of course, all big hits for Stixx. And the album just, went nuts. It probably went, a platinum a million times. And I have the RCA club pressing. So even the club pressing had the hologram, which is interesting. A lot of people shit on club pressings, but I really don't think in this case, I don't have a club pressing of a record that I feel is inferior. Now, because I have the club pressing of this, I don't have an original that's a non-club press, so I'm not really comparing them. But I don't really hear any problems with this album, besides the hologram, potentially causing a little bit of background noise on there, and that's probably very little. It's probably minor, but it's still cool to have that. So I think I'd rather have that on there and have the noise than to not. But Paradise Theater is an excellent record. I wouldn't pass it up if you see it in the bins. All right, the next three records are indie records. I'm not putting them in, I would put the indie in here if it was in there, but these records came out in the 90s to 2000s. So March 21st, 1994, Corey Tucker, who is from Sleater-Kinney, had an album called Heavens to Betsy, a band called Heavens to Betsy, and the album is Calculated. I don't know if you can see that or not. Heavens to Betsy, Calculated. This album is fantastic. It's really just drums and bass, maybe a little bit of guitar in there. I don't know. Let me see. I don't know if she put on here the other instrumentalists. She really didn't. Yeah, she did actually. Corin Tucker, guitar, vocals, drums. Corin Tucker, sorry. Tracy Sawyer, drums, bass, guitar. So yeah, there is guitar in here, but it's very bass heavy. I mean, it really sounds like it could be just bass and drums. And I think that's all they did live. I mean, if it was just the two of them, I think that's all they ever played live was the drums and the bass. Or yeah, the drums and the bass. But this is a fantastic album. It's a great indie, Riot Grrrl type record. And Corin Tucker was really influenced by Riot Grrrl. That's how, at least from my understanding is, whether she was into music or not before that, that really triggered her to become activated and become like an activist and, use music to, do kind of activism. And what's very interesting is this record came out in 1994, and even on the liner notes, she wrote this thing that says, and I'll just read it, because there's a song on here called White Girl. And she said, I wrote the song White Girl because I wanted to address the audience for this record, mainly white people, about racism in the punk alternative community, in myself, in Riot Grrrl. So many punk songs by white people address racism as something other and not at all part of the white people who are singing. It is really scary to take responsibility for your own privilege and racism, but I think that it's necessary for this to happen before anything will change, before any productive dialogue will take place. Instead of buying the next XXX white boy record, white kids could spend their money on some books that I think are useful in thinking about racism and sexism. And she talks about a couple books and some authors. And I thought that was really interesting reading this. I don't know if I read that in 1994, honestly, or if I even understood it. What the message was there about privilege and about white people singing and talking about black people's issues or just talking about racism in general. How that's kind of like a weird, it's not necessarily weird, but it's an interesting perspective, because without recognizing, racism in ourselves and not understanding the experience of black people or minorities, and coming at the issue of racism from a position of privilege, And I really think that, and that's interesting because a lot of people would say, oh, the woke culture this, woke culture that. Well, this was 1994, woke, the meaning of woke didn't exist. She's not saying, hey, I'm woke. She's just talking about racism from a perspective of a white person and wanting to, be an advocate, and be somebody that, can discuss that issue as a white person. You know what I mean? talking about racism and talking about what black people go through the burden for that can't just be put on black people alone. Everybody has to kind of understand that situation, at least somewhat, in order to be an advocate for it and, be helpful to that situation. So I just think it's very interesting that, she's bringing up a woke, mindset in 1994, and it just goes to show that, we have come a long way. And I think that, a backlash towards wokeism or social justice or anything like that is hugely problematic, because there really should be no backlash to, equality. You know what I mean? That just makes no sense, and, a lot of people, I know other people who said, woke, the term woke, yes, it takes on a bad connotation now. It shouldn't, though. It really shouldn't, because it is a good term to recognize, yourself and your contribution to the problem. You know what I mean? Especially if it wasn't pointed out before. You know what I mean? Not everybody's going to be aware of it, because especially like black people obviously experience it, right? White people who want to be advocates, who want to say, hey, what are you guys going through? Blah, 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 this and that. We don't understand it a lot of times. We don't completely, because we can't experience it 100%. We can only listen, and I think that's what a lot of people said, during the Time's Up and stuff like that. We have to just listen. We can't judge. We can't not believe. We just have to listen. We have to, take it in. You know what I mean? And I think that's what she's saying here on this album. Look, don't be part of the problem, especially if you're white. You know what I mean? Especially if you're a white person. Don't be part of the problem, because that makes it 10 times worse. Black people are already advocating for themselves and trying to fight for their, rights constantly. They don't need us to say, yo, bro, I get it. But they do need us to listen and understand at some level, what they're experiencing is real, first of all, and that we need to change our attitudes towards a lot of the issues that that they experience. And just understand it in ourselves, that privilege is real. I just really thought that was really interesting to hear her bring up the word privilege and all that stuff in 1994. I thought that's really interesting because, myself, and this is just myself, right? I'm only speaking for myself. Privilege as a term didn't really even exist for me, until all this stuff started happening in the past 5 years or so, and I never really truly understood it. I used to work with a lot of black people, in Detroit and stuff like that. Like I would work in offices where it was, mostly black people, and I was one of the only few white people and we would talk and have conversations and things like that. And I would say dumb stuff, stupid things. And then they would point it out. They weren't like being mean to me, like, oh, you're a fucking asshole, you're a racist. But they would say, hey, what you just said is kind of fucking weird, like from my perspective. And I had to think about, what I just said is fucking weird and, not the right thing to say. And I learned a lot from that, and yeah, it's just interesting, and I don't think anybody needs to feel guilty per se about their attitudes, if they're wrong. But if they perpetuate it and they keep doing it after it's pointed out, that's the problem, right? That's the problem. Once it's pointed out that a white person has privilege, we have to kind of own that in a way and take that moving forward as, something that's real. If we all don't do that, nothing's going to change. We're going to just keep perpetuating the same problems, and keep causing the same issues for minorities, people of color in the United States especially. But I think privilege obviously is evident everywhere. Anyway, I just thought that that's what's very interesting about this record. This is a fantastic record. There's some really, really good songs on here. Decide is great. Stay Away is a really great punk song, really aggressive. Waitress Hell is excellent. Axemen that's another song about kind of racism and stuff like that. And yeah, anyway, White Girl obviously is a song that she referenced. Really great album. And this is a repress from Heaven's Betsy, Corn Tucker, who is now in Sleater-Kinney. She actually has her own band, which I'm going to talk about here in just a sec. She put 2 records out with that, and she has, I think it's an album called Filthy Friends or something like that. She's a fantastic artist. Her voice is really unique. It's not a traditional singing voice. It's kind of like a wailing voice, kind of, but in such a good way. It's fantastic. Great record. Heavens to Betsy, Calculated. 2 more records. This one came out September 18th, 2012, and this is Corn Tucker Band, Kill My Blues. This is a really long album. I think this might be almost 60 minutes long, or at least 50 minutes, because the runouts go all the way to the end, man. They are really small, and I really like that. I appreciate that. They put a lot of music on this record, and it's not obviously an audiophile release because of that, but I don't care about that. This is just an excellent indie rock record in the vein of Sleater-Kinney. If you like Sleater-Kinney, I don't see a reason why you're gonna not love or like Corn Tucker Band. Kill My Blues is great. There's so many good songs on here. Kill My Blues is awesome. Summer Jams is great. Yeah, every song on here is really good. Corn Tucker, already talked about her. She's kind of an activist a little bit in her music anyway. And, you know, Portland, Oregon, Washington sound, that indie rock sound on Kill Rock Stars. You kind of know what you're getting when you buy this, but it's still great. Like I said, if you like stuff in the vein of Sleater-Kinney, this Corn Tucker Band stuff is really good. Excellent album. And last record in the hard rock, indie rock section is January 13th, 2017. This was my favorite record of 2017. I love this album, and this band is really fun. They changed their sound a bit, but this first album is so great. And this is The Regrets. This is Feel Your Feelings, Fool. Lydia Love, is that her name? No, Lydia Knight is the lead singer and main songwriter for this album. And this is just kind of like a power pop masterpiece, a power pop indie pop masterpiece. I mean, this is a masterpiece. This is a 5 out of 5 album. These songs are so hooky and so memorable. I Don't Like You, A Living Human Girl, Hey Now, Hot, Seashore Jukebox. But every song on here is great. Every song. Yeah, I love this album. It is so much fun. It is power pop, indie rock. Let's see, where's the inner sleeve? Just has the lyrics on here, nothing special. It's just a very, very well written record. If you listen to a couple of these songs, they're fantastic. A lot of, you know, angst and anger on this record, even though in a sugary, you know, I think package, which is interesting. You know, the juxtaposition of, you know, I guess having your cake and eat it too, you know, making really great power pop music or pop music in general, or indie pop music, but having the biting lyrics, you know, the really strong message of, you know, feminism. You know, really a lot of this stuff deals with that, and it also deals with, you know, there's stuff on here directly, you know, addressing Trump and the election and people with that attitude against women. A lot of stuff on here, and then there's just some cheesy love songs on here too, so it's really good stuff. Yeah, fantastic record, and it's a really young band. All these guys in here on this first record are probably 17 years old or younger, maybe 18. They're all really young, so really fresh take on music, and, you know, fresh attitude with a lot of indie rock, you know, cred, or not necessarily cred, but a lot of indie rock influences in there. And I just think this album is great. I really like The Regrets. I just think they're fantastic, especially this first album. Yeah, it's really good. Nothing else to say about that. Buy it, because I love it. I would highly recommend that record. I'll throw them all on the playlist and throw all the songs on there. All right, that's it for hard rock and pop rock. A little bit of a rant in there about, privilege and stuff like that, political stuff, or activism stuff. I think we all need to, everybody needs to think about that. They just do. No matter, it's hard, especially if you don't buy into that, or you don't want to buy into that. But I think we all need to buy into it at least a little bit, to understand and relate. Anyway, that's it for this video. I'll do one more video for the heavy metal stuff that I purchased in 2017. Thanks.